We are continuing discussions about the illicit trade with TTMA President Franka Costelloe. First question though, and then we get it out of the way because we have the budget is coming up. So, Ms. Costelloe, thank you for joining us, but we want to know what you're looking at closely in the upcoming budget and what do you hope to see if you dream big?
Dreaming big and recognizing some of the constraints that we're all working within these new times. 2020 has been hard on everybody as a result of the COVID-19 and other implications in the gas and oil industry as well. But we are hoping for fiscal measures that will incentivize the manufacturing industry and support and bolster. So we're hoping to see some incentives that will improve capital access, FX allocations to manufacturers, some VAT reform measures that are taken, and also improvements to the legacy parks, infrastructure development that again incentivize manufacturing and also invite investment, not only by local, but from foreign.
All right, thank you very much for that. Now we start back once more into our discussion about the illicit trade. Now we started it before, but we're able to dive a little more deeply into the Manufacturing Association perception on this. And it seems as though it's a global issue, but is it that it's happening a lot more outside of Trinidad and Tobago than it is in Trinidad and Tobago? How pervasive is it in-house?
We recognize that we've estimated anywhere between a $12 to $15 billion tax gap on the illicit trade market. That is tax evasion and tax revenues that are not being collected by the government because of the illicit trade market at $12 to $15 billion dollars. And of that, we are able to estimate that 13 million is from just the tobacco industry in itself.
Now, when you say 12 to 15 billion, this is per what? Is this annually?
Per annum.
So where are some of the instances where this kind of trade is happening or happened?
Well, the products are being brought in through the loopholes of the borders. So you'll have trafficking happening that could be even what we call the suitcase trade. Right? You have to remember that illicit trade is defined by any product that is sold on the market that has not paid tax or underpaid the tax that is due on it. And so suitcase trade, somebody bringing in products from outside of Trinidad, genuine products, but have not paid the tax on it, illicit trade. Products that are smuggled through our borders on boats is illicit trade, or through customs and through the ports, that is also illicit trade.
Now, with regard to looking at the fact, and I like the fact that you raise the issue that some of these items may be authentic items, but it's that they haven't necessarily paid the duties, the taxes that are supposed to be put on them. Because one of the things I wonder is that someone will come with brand X or product X and say it costs this amount, so they get a certain amount of tax that they need to pay. Somebody may have the same product and say, well, it costs this amount, and giving a totally different figure. What kind of checks and balances are in place to say, okay, well, this is what it costs, or is this a mean, or is it, do you need to work with your certain papers? How is that looked at?
So a genuine product that is brought in through what you're talking about sounds like the suitcase trade. You would have to declare invoices and receipts for the products, and you have to fill out paperwork along the lines of commercial products that are for resale as well. What we're seeing is that the businesses that do pay the proper taxes for these genuine products have a serious market share erosion that is happening from the illegit business owners that are bringing in products through suitcase trade or other means as well. But there is commercial paperwork that has to be filled out, and the tax declarations and so on are supported with invoices and receipts.
I like the fact that you speak about market share erosion, because sometimes people may say, well, I'm buying it from this person because they have it cheaper, as opposed to saying, okay, well, I'm getting it from this person. Is it just Is it just a matter of saying we're not paying enough, or how does market share erosion affect the market down the line?
Okay, and that's an excellent question because, and that is a public awareness that TTMA is trying to bring forth in an attempt to curtail demand and, in effect, then reduce the supply of it. So of course, demand and supply works hand in hand together here. And so the consumers have a huge responsibility on this illicit trade industry growing to the capacity that it has in Trinidad and Tobago. And so it's important to recognize the impact here that they're having. When a consumer supports an illicit business that is supplying illicit products, you are supporting a whole industry that is not just about tobacco or cigarette, alcohol or pharmaceuticals being cheaper than a legit business. You are supporting an industry that is also deep rooted within a crime wave. These products that come through these borders are the same holes where guns and drugs and human trafficking and trafficking of wildlife is also happening. The market share erosion is also stealing away legit jobs from the communities, and also the revenue that government would generate that supports a lot of the infrastructure that we depend on, such as roads, water, electricity, hospitals. So in supporting an illicit product such as tobacco or alcohol, you are supporting an entire crime wave that is creating a societal issue in terms of people.
So, but answer the question though to the person who's saying, but Miss Franka, I'm not buying drugs, I'm not buying guns, I'm buying soap and it's COVID times. What would you tell that person?
We tell them and how you may not be doing it directly, but you are ultimately funding an entire industry that has gotten us to a point where crime through the borders is on the rise. And none of them are separate and apart to us at the TTMA. They are all endemic of a whole system that is working together because they come through the same avenues in our borders. And so every pack of cigarettes or bottle of alcohol that is an illicit product is part of the problem.
And we started speaking about COVID. During the pandemic, what kind of slowdown have we been looking at? And has that seen a corresponding rise in illicit trade?
Well, it's difficult to measure the value of illicit trade and if it's going up and down because it's undeclared. So you have to use a sense of what you're seeing on the black market, what's on the roadside, what you're seeing inside of the stores and being sold and so on. What I can say has increased is enforcement. TTMA created with TTPS and other associations such as Crime Stoppers an illicit task force with TTPS that Deputy Commissioner of Police based on Ford heads, and we created this in 2018. And since we have done that, we have had some seizures of illicit products such as clothing. We moved out to the market some poor food that was being sold as well. And we have a few tobacco products that are also being reviewed right now. So we've seen an impact. We have also done training with over 100 police officers in helping them to identify what an illicit product is, and also about 30 customs officers to again understand what illicit products look like and what laws they do have the power to enforce.
So we want to talk about some of those partnerships and the laws and those measures to mitigate the illicit trade. When we return, we're speaking with Franka Costelloe, president of the TTMA. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking with president of the TTMA, Franka Costelloe, about the illicit trade. And just when we took the break, we were talking about some of the partnerships in terms of training sessions with customs and TTPS, members of the TTPS. Where does the business community factor into working together to mitigate the trade, the illicit trade, Franco?
So the business industry, the private sectors, they are able to help us identify areas with illicit products that are out there and focus our direction. But they're also providing support in terms of giving some funding for the equipment that is needed, such as body cams and office equipment, to help support this illicit trade division. They are able to offer the training specific to what is a legit product. So when we look at the labeling, for some of us, we're not so fully aware of what needs to be there and what should not, and so on, and how to identify it. And they're able to come in and give us that expert advice.
And one of the things that people, like, we've spoken about the financial aspect and the amazing amount of money. It's at 12 to 15 billion per annum being lost due to the illicit trade. But one of the things that we sometimes don't necessarily focus on as much are other effects, other factors such as health. Because I can see someone who is saying, okay, I'm producing this and it needs to go through these measures, it needs to be tested by this body or this board, and they have their products to a certain standard. Someone who's not doing that may not be as compelled to carry their products through the rigorous kind of testing to make sure it's of a certain quality. Do you find that with those things that you find, because you say not everything would be found, not everything can be researched because it's illicit, but do you find that with some of those that you see?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and that is why a lot of these products can be sold at such lower prices, because the level of quality that is there to guard your health is not put into the products itself. And if you're not concerned about the societal issues that are at play here with the supporting time waves and so on, and when you buy these illicit products, at least be concerned about your own health and what you're bringing into your family, for your family as well, for them to use. These products are unregulated, they do not meet standards. You don't know how they've been stored or how they've been handled. You don't know what's in them because it is not regulated through the standards of chemistry, food and drugs, the Bureau of Standards and so on that we have in place in Trinidad and Tobago to protect our health. So why taking risk of using a product that you don't know where that's coming from?
No, I hear you, Ms. Costelloe, speaking about the work that the TTMA has done with the TTPS and other agencies to have training, contributing towards body cams. If we were to look at this from a government aspect, what are some of the things that you are looking at in terms of measures, policies, procedures that can come from the side of the government to deal with some of these things, the illicit trade?
Well, we do have adequate laws as of right now. There are some recommendations that we're going to be making towards improving those laws to amp up the enforcement of it. Right now, we know that fines can range anywhere between 20 to 500,000 and up to 12 months in prison for breach on illicit trade. So we know that those laws will exist. What we need is enforcement of those laws, and they need the resources towards being able to combat illicit trade. And the resources come from having more persons that are trained on how to identify illicit products. They're knowledgeable about what laws they have under their belt to be able to enforce, and how to go about properly seizing products as well. There's a whole process that's involved with doing it, and that is our mission here at TTMA. We are committed to working with the government to improve the resources that they need, and also support to just help them to know how to go about reducing illicit trade.
Where does that training come from, though? Because yes, training needs to happen, but is it coming from outside our borders? Because through it all, while we're still trying to operate, the pandemic is on.
Yeah. Illicit trade is essentially products coming in through our borders and not paying tax and avoiding the necessary taxes that are supposed to be paid. So some of it can be made domestically manufactured here and improperly labeled and then not declared and so on. But the mass majority of it is being imported.
Okay, now is that training for officers and agents to recognize illicit items? Is that happening from in-house? Is that capacity in-house, or do we need to get that training or those educators from outside? And if they're outside of our borders, can it happen virtually?
My apologies. Yeah, I realized I didn't understand. I didn't hear the question properly there, but we do have the capacity in Trinidad and Tobago. We have that expertise to do that type of training with the law enforcers to identify products and also guide them through the proper seizure process. We certainly have those expertise here.
Now, with regard to training and building that capacity, do you see any other partnerships that we can use to tackle illicit trade? So TTPS is there, customs is there. Do you see any other low-hanging fruit, any other business or bodies that can be involved to help mitigate this?
Customs, Port, Chemistry, Food and Drugs Division, Crime Stoppers by having anonymous tips being called in, TTBS, the Bureau of Standards.
Now, once again, because we're dealing with COVID, there has been a downturn in some of the things that are happening, and even like people outside. Where do you see businesses in the foreseeable future, 8 to 12 months?
In regards to illicit trade or in regards to COVID-19? I'm sorry.
So with regard to illicit trade and how it is they're dealing with that?
So COVID-19 has certainly impacted supply chains, and for legit businesses, we're seeing a reduction on products coming in. So I would hope that it's having the same impact on the illicit trade market as well. But at the same time, like I said, demand and supply really is where this is at. And if it is that persons are seeking out less economic needs for products, so they may be more inclined to take a chance on the products that cost less, but they know are not legit products. And again, it just comes back to, as you said, your health concerns. You should really stay clear of those products. And also, by supporting those products, you are again supporting a whole crime wave of other issues that are coming through our borders, such as wildlife, human trafficking, drugs, and ammunition.
And with regard to things, because I'm glad you raised the point of wildlife, but take us through those penalties once more, please, in terms of like what their range be, because sometimes people say if nobody catch me, it's all right. But in terms of the penalties that can be enforced, that are already in place in the books, what are some of them again, please?
So false declaration in regards to excise revenue is 20,000, and for each offence that's treble value of the goods of 4,000, whichever is greater, your fine goes up. So the Tobacco Control Act, breaches in packaging and labelling, is up to between 100,000 and 6 months imprisonment, and up to 500,000 and 12 months imprisonment just for tobacco products that are considered illicit.
Now, if, say, for instance, someone sees an item, a product, and they say, I think this is too good to be true, is there any place that they can check to kind of make sure that they're not dealing in an illicit item?
So the first point I would recommend is that you call into TTPS. You could also call TTBS, the Bureau of Standards, Chemistry, Food and Drugs Division. You could call Crime Stoppers, is very much involved, if not heading the illicit trade force as well. And TTPS, because they have the illicit task force, is the best place to go.
All right, so we want to thank you so much, Franka Costelloe, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, for lending some insight into the illicit trade as it is in Trinidad and Tobago, 12 to 15 billion per annum. Whoa. And we want to thank you once again for joining us. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm DK Roster. Have a good night.